Hello, everyone, and shalom. And thank you for joining another session of Yoga Readers. We are currently reading Yoga, a Gem for Women, a great work by Geeta Iyengar. And for those of you joining us today for the first time, I'll say very briefly that Yoga Readers is a global yogic reading community that reads together the books about yoga, people who are interested in reading about the depth of yoga in books. So we could call it yoga off the mat, although we are practitioners. Most of the community are practitioners, and the majority of the community is yoga teachers. And we read parts of books during 2 weeks, and then we meet on Zoom to discuss whatever we read. We reflect on it, we discuss it, we reread it, and it is our way of integrating the yogic knowledge into our own practice and life. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Agi Wittich. I'm located in Jerusalem, Israel. I've been practicing yoga for 2 decades. I'm an Iyengr yoga teacher, and I have a PhD in comparative religion. And in my research, I focus on yoga, gender, and Indian philosophy. So I bring from my own knowledge and experience to these sessions. So, in today's session, we will discuss what I call Unit 6 of Yoga Jam for Women. Since this book has so many chapters, I took several chapters together into reading units. And today we will discuss the reading unit that was comprised of twisting postures, backward extensions or backbends, and yoga kuranta, which is the practice of yoga with rope walls. So we will start by a summary of what we read, and then we'll go into a close reading. So we will read bits of chapters that we read, and we'll discuss them as we go. And at the end, we'll have a part where we have a group discussion. That part is not recorded and not uploaded to YouTube to make people feel more comfortable to just speak out without thinking about the fact that they're recorded. And at the end, we'll have a summary of what we had today and what to look for in the next 2 weeks. So just before I start the summary, I'd like to ask you if you can share. It can be in the chat. It can be, if you want, you can out loud, you can open the microphone and share which posture that you read about makes you feel most liberated or happy or joyful, and why. Because some of these postures are very positive and they affect our mood really well. Last time we talked about forward bends, forward extensions, and their effect on quietening the mind. And then we also spoke about inversions and how they cultivate courage in us. So if anyone wants to share about a posture, either twist or backbend or wall rope work that makes you happy or joyful or even liberated, it can be just a physical sense of liberation. So Elizabeth says, Ushtrasana, camel posture. Good one. Anyone else? I really like rope work wherever I go, whenever I move into a new house, an apartment, I always install wall ropes. It's something that actually strengthens the wall since you insert these rods into the wall. So it makes the wall even stronger. After I leave, I feel like I made the house stronger than before. And I use them all the time. I use them in my private classes. I use them in my home practice. I love ropes. And you can use ropes. Someone said before that if you don't have wall ropes installed in your home, you can always tie them to something. We'll discuss that later. So Maria says, "Sukta parang." Okay. Okay, so let's start with the summary. And if something else comes up, you can, of course, share. And this, sorry, someone wants to say something? Oh, Dhanura. Yeah, it's also very good back then. So in this reading unit of Yoga Agent for Women by Geeta Iyengar, he first exposed and explained about twists, the parivrita actions, and then the backward extensions. And she framed these within women's sadhana. So it's not just the yogic practice done at a certain moment, but the yoga sadhana is the path of yoga. It's part of, let's say, who we are or how we live, and how these postures affect us even outside the mat, even after these postures are over. And she explained not only about the physical shape of the postures, but also how these postures are like instruments for rebalancing the effects of modern life's habitual forward bending tendencies. So we don't twist when someone calls us. We turn the whole body. So it's very rare that we twist in our everyday life. And it's even rarer, I can say that more rare, that we backbend in our normal everyday life. So we do forward bends quite often and we sit. But these two family of postures of backbend and twists are very, let's say, not a common human movement in our everyday life. So she addresses that. And she says that when we do practice them, we restore our equilibrium of both the body, the breath, and the mind. Gita presents twisting postures like Bharadvajasana and Marichyasana, which also have mythological connections to them, or I shouldn't say mythological, they have narratives that are linked to them. So these sacred texts that explain the story behind the sage Bharadvaja or the sage Marichi. And there is also the posture Adha Matsyendrasana. So Matsyendra was the first, he became human, the first fish human that taught yoga to humanity. And I stopped the summary for a moment. I did have a thought about having a lecture, a talk about the stories behind the postures, the sacred narratives that are linked to postures, because I really feel that if we understand what is the story behind the posture, other than the technicalities of it and the effects of the right alignment, there is another part that we can practice in that pose. So she explained how twisting postures are toning the abdominal region and how they regulate the digestive and also the reproductive system. And she explained how lateral rotations of the spine, which is a more anatomical way of looking at it, how it cleanses the internal organs through rhythmic compression and release, which serves us like an internal massage. And for women, Geeta Ji explains us, these asanas are not optional, they are essential. Since they also support hormonal balance, they address menstrual irregularities and also help regulate energy during transitional phases of life, such as menopause and also postpartum recovery. So she says twists are a daily must for women. We should keep that in mind. And then when she goes into backbends, she starts from, let's say, foundational actions in Ustrasana, the camel pose, and then she goes into more deeper extensions like Mudana and then Udasana. And she highlights all of these, we can call them posterior extensions, how they counteract the collapse of the anterior spine common in daily life, and how this stimulates the pranic flow, how they enhance circulation, how they help with respiratory capacity, how they restore this psychological vitality. And backbends are taught in this book not only as energizers, but as builders of courage and also emotional resilience, which is fascinating. And then she moves on talking about well ropes, which now it's, I think, common outside of Iyengar yoga as well. But when the book was written, it was like a hallmark of Iyengar yoga. It was unique to Iyengar yoga to teach asana practice through wall ropes. And it's a very interesting section within Iyengar yoga. I think the first time I read this book, I was surprised that she spoke about ropes because at the time I wasn't familiar with rope work so much. I did know Adho Mukha Svanasana with a rope. And I knew that some women sometimes practice Shishyasana with a rope, but I didn't have this extensive experience with ropes. So when first I read this book, I was surprised how she had a whole section to rope work. And she really explains the importance of wall work, rope, wall rope work, and how yoga kurunta is so important for Iyengar yoga practitioners and especially for women. And I'll address the yoga kurunta later. So before we start reading, I'd like to share with you the extra materials that I sent out during these 2 weeks. This was unit 6, and as usual, I sent out focus questions and reflection questions. I always hope that the focus questions make you read with more alertness, that maybe they even ignite some kind of curiosity in you. I share a question and that's interesting for me, and you go and you read and you look for the answer. I don't know if you write down the answer when you find it or if you mark it in some way. I would like to hear how you address the focus questions. And then the reflection questions, it's always another curious part to me to know how do you address them. Do you take the reflective questions to your students as something to consider while they practice? Or do you have a yoga reader's journal where you write down your reflections to yourself? This is my way in trying to connect what we read in the book and then how we feel about it. If the focus questions, my intention is to send you into reading, the reflection question is to make you understand how actively what you read can serve you in different parts. And then there is always the extra material, the expansion on something. So I sent an article about Bharadvaja, the sage behind the posture of Bharadvajasana. And we have several Bharadvajasanas. So I thought it's an important posture to look into and very interesting stories tied to Bharadvaja. And I said, I'm really keen on having a talk about the story behind the postures. And I thought about it, and we have really many sages to cover and other gods, let's say, so Garuda and Hanuman, and we can discuss it if it's something you're interested in. And then I sent you another piece about Yoga Kurunta with quotes of Geeta Ji and a bit about more about working with ropes. And I sent you 3 quotes that some of you said that you read them out in Shavasana or that you read them in the beginning of the class to your students. I really hope that they work for you. And I'd like to take the opportunity to thank those who decided to support my work and buying me a cup of chai. So I have my real cup of chai always with me in these sessions, but also when I prepare them. So thank you for the chai supporters. And thank you for those who decided to support my yoga research. Right now, my yoga research is about yoga and trauma. And I just had a talk about it. And when the recording will be available, of course, I will share it with all of you. It was with a group of teachers in India. It was a fascinating talk. It was interesting talking with them. It's not that like what I brought is fascinating. And I would also like to thank those who decided to support my sadhana, what I call the sadhana companion, which also helps me in different layers of my everyday life as well. So thank you all for your support. And I really hope that you enjoyed the extra materials that I sent and that I plan on keep on sending. Another issue, last time we had a workshop about standing postures, comparing the instructions of both Light on Yoga and Yoga Jam for Women by Geeta Ji. And some of you asked me to have another workshop. And I was thinking about seated postures and twists. So let me know if you're interested. We might have a WhatsApp call where you can say that you're interested and we could have another workshop. Now that things are more quiet in Israel, I'll be more available to have another workshop like that. Okay, so let's go into the reading now. I would like us to start reading about twists, the paribrita actions, and I'll share the screen as usual. And you can, if you want, unmute yourself and read out loud the parts marked in yellow. This is very brief. So we start by how Geeta Ji explains what are these twisting postures, and then we go into their effects. So that we'll be together. So don't think you're volunteering now just to read these 4 lines. So please.
The asanas in this section rotate and twist the spinal column and the trunk laterally. They are extremely beneficial to women and should be practiced daily. They tone, massage, and rejuvenate the abdominal organs.
Thank you. And we're jumping to the effects. This is page 239.
The effects of these asanas are obvious. They are aimed at obtaining flexibility of the spinal column. In the beginning, the spine is stiff, but with practice, it becomes flexible. These asanas are extremely helpful in relieving rheumatism, backache, and pain in the spinal column. They are useful for the hunchback. For sprain in the back, however, or for slip disc trouble, they should be done against a wall. They increase the mobility of the shoulders and the shoulder blades and expand the chest. They also give a neat shape to the ankles and the calves. They massage and rejuvenate the abdominal organs. They are a boon for those who suffer from indigestion, acidity, appendicitis, irritation of the intestines, diabetes, and flatulence. They are useful for alleviating disorders of the kidneys, the liver, the spleen, and the gallbladder. They regulate the peristaltic movement of the intestines, strengthen the uterus and the waist, and correct complaints such as the enlarged bladder. Menstrual disorders, malfunctioning of the endocrine glands, and obesity are all remedied greatly by the practice of these asanas. They relieve back pain and exhaustion due to overwork or during the menstrual period. They are beneficial after delivery, but should be done with the support of a wall.
Thank you. Okay. So about twists. It is a very short reading, as you said, and I feel that I hope that we often practice twisting postures in our everyday practice and of course in classes. Usually an Iyengar yoga class will include at least one twist. We know of other twists. So Geeta Ji addresses only the seated twisting postures that are called twisting postures, but there are 3 standing twisting postures. Do you recall them? Do you know them? Would you like to comment on them? It's not a quiz. It's a general question. So in that,
Parvita Trikonasana, the first one I think I'll come to think of, and Parvita Ardha Chandrasana also.
Yes, and there is Parivritta Asana as well, which is a quite advanced posture, but it is there. So in standing postures, we have Parivrittas. In Asana, we have a Parivritta as well, one or two, if you consider Pashma. So there is a twisting action there as well. And in seated postures, sometimes there is a twisting action before the forward bend is practiced. So there are usually twists in Iyengar yoga practice, and when we look at the effects, maybe we understand why. And I could say very broadly, they soften the body, they open up the tissue, they help with stress, they help with depression. So whenever I look at emotional issues, twists will be there. And many times, of course, back pain, not the first thing to do, but twists will be there. When fatigue is there, when we are tired, then of course twists will be there. So Geeta Iyengar said in page 231 that they are extremely beneficial to women and should be practiced daily since they tone, massage, and rejuvenate the abdominal organs. And she addresses menstrual disorders, but also the pain that come with the days of menstruation. So very beneficial. And she also addresses postpartum. Did you see that? So there are not many postures that Geeta ji will say this is really good for postpartum, but for twists, she will say that. So there are several postures that Geeta ji says that it should practice with the wall for beginners. Did you catch that? Would you like to name the postures that are meant to be practiced with the wall for beginners, especially? Think about it for a moment. We just read it. Okay, so I prepared this image for you. And there we see Bharadvajasana 1, Ardha Matsyendrasana, Hashasana, and Marishyasana 3. And from these 4 postures, 2 of them she demonstrated using a wall in Yoga Jam for women, but you can get the sense of the hand placing on the wall for Marishyasana 3 as well, and for Bharadvajasana 1. Okay, I hope this is beneficial. And even though she said this is for beginners, I find that even in my own practice, I could be regarded as a beginner in many aspects, I am. But even as you practice with the years, to go back to the wall is a great thing. It really works well on the shoulder girdle, on the shoulder blade, opens the chest really good. And it's a great help to use the wall. So for Bharadvajasana, she says on page 231, at the beginning, this asana may be practiced near a wall so that the hips can twist more easily. So it's more about the hip movement and to help turn the sides of the pelvic more. And then in Marishyasana 3, she says, if it is not possible to do this asana independently, it may be done with the support of the wall. So this is very general, not just for beginners. For Ardha Matsyendrasana 237, she says that for those who are overweight or cannot hold hands behind the back, they should practice with a wall. So basically, if you cannot do it correctly, the full posture, then using the wall is of great help. And Tashasana in page 239, she says, if this asana cannot be practiced independently, again, do it with the support of the wall. So as I see it, it's again Geeta ji compassion towards those who cannot do the full posture. It's not that if you cannot do it, don't. It is that if you cannot do it this way, do it with the wall. And you may know other prop supports for twisting actions, using a belt if your hands don't reach behind the back, using a block. There are numerous chair variations for these postures. There is even standing Marishyasana 3. But I think that Geeta ji at the time wanted to give the support that everyone has. So without elaborate props, we all have a wall or a door or a cupboard that we can go to and do the twisting postures. Okay, so now let's move on to backbends, unless you want to add something or ask something. Okay. So I'll add. Yep. So here we are reading about backbends. It's a bit longer, and we have another section reading the effects. So please feel free to open your mic and read out. Oh, again, you are painting red on this.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm on my phone actually today. I'm not sure what's happening. Usually it's my laptop, but yes, I can read out. I'm not sure why it just painted.
I'll just reshare, not to have the red mark.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, I'm so sorry. Please. Okay. Asanas backbend. Our daily tasks often involve forward bending movement. These stretch the posterior side of the spine. Rarely do we bend the other way. Asanas in this section stretch the spinal column in a concave movement and are very important as the anterior spine extends in backbend, making the blood circulate more freely. The opening of the chest in these particular postures energizes the lungs and breathing becomes deep, with the result that oxygenated blood circulates all over the body. The asanas from the other sections prepare the spinal column for the movements in this section. The first two asanas given here are easy to perform and should be practiced first. I'm not able to see beyond that. Should be. Yes. First, along with some preparatory work from section 8 on Yoga Karunta. Sorry, section 7 on Yoga Karunta. Then the last 3 asanas in this section will be easier to do. Some asanas are described with support and they should be included with this practice. Do not feel alarmed if you experience dizziness or blackouts in some of these postures, especially when coming up after completing an asana. Do not close the eyes, keep them wide open, and the dizziness or the blackout will disappear. Overall effects, asana 69 to 71. The concave movement of the spine in these asanas is somewhat unusual, which is not normally found in our everyday life. They tone and train the spine and the muscles of the back to bend backwards. They rejuvenate the spine and develop physical strength and vitality. They bring freedom of movement and are ideal for those suffering from stooping shoulders, hunchback, slipped disc, stiff spine, rheumatism, and backache. They open the chest and improve breathing. Women are used to bending the spine forwards in doing many of their household chores. These movements tend to make the posterior side of the spine flexible, whereas in these postures, it is the anterior or the frontal spine which is worked more. Elderly people can conveniently do all these poses without inviting any injury to the spine. Dullness and depression vanish with the practice of these asanas. They bring courage and willpower and give mental courage to bend backwards.
And I think there is one more bit. Yes.
Overall effects, asanas 72 and 70. Weakness of the mind with its attendant anxious states and depression is predominant among women. Even if one makes a show of having a strong mind, one may fall a prey to these conditions, especially after the age of 35. This change is perceptible and results in such symptoms as tremors and coldness of hands and feet. These two asanas are excellent for these conditions. They have a magical effect on the mind. When practiced with support, they relieve tension, relax the nervous system, and rest the brain. They are advanced in their nature, but once they are mastered, they are of great help in keeping the body supple and active, the mind sharp and alert, the conscience clear and pure. At physiological level, they broaden the expanse of the chest and improve respiration and circulation. They relieve pain in the sacrum and the coccyx. The spine becomes elastic, firm, and healthy. They remove dullness and laziness, make women more cheerful and courageous. They have a soothing effect on the mind and strengthen one emotionally.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So
I just ask something, or because they say she speaks of it's good for the elderly and so on, but in my country, Sweden, we have a huge problem with osteoporosis, and there is discussion that you shouldn't do that strong back bends and stuff, and like things that might be good if you don't have, but if you have this frailty in your spine. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, she does say in page 246 that elderly people can conveniently do all these poses without inviting any injury to the spine. So I would add they should do it without inviting injury to the spine. And there is a whole section in Iyengar yoga for practice for the elderly, or they call it sometimes yoga for seniors. And what they do there is many backbends that are supported. And that is important for that stage of life because of feeling of having less courage and a bit more depression and loneliness and more sorrow. And when one practices, let's say, Ushtrasana on a chair with a lot of bolster support, or that they go to the horse and they stand and they arch back, or if they do what I really like giving my elder students is prasana over a chair with the support of a bolster. So they start by sitting, they hold the chair, and then they lift the buttocks up, they lift the pelvis up, and they lean back on the bolster, which is on the chair rest. And then they can even just hold the chair. They don't have to reach back, but if they want, they can. And then they hold the wall behind them. So it's very secure in that way and supported. So you're right about that I wouldn't give older people with osteoporosis coming for my class for the first time to practice some of the advanced back bends. But I think Bhujangasana and the Shalabhasana, I think these postures are good. The thing is that they will have very limited ability to practice them at all. So with bolster support under the rib cage, pressing the hands is very beneficial for them in Bhujangasana. Shalabhasana, you can do just the hands, just the legs, one leg, and then just being very alert. Is there any pain coming? Because that will be very immediate. The pain in the lumbar spine, it shoots out and they say, oh, this hurts me. And then we have to revisit the work on tucking in the tailbone, elongating the lower back, and so on. So if these postures, you're right, they require some muscular tone. And if these are new practitioners and they are at that age, so not over 35, as she says about women, but over 65, over 70, then yes, they will need special care. They will need support. They will have to practice very gradually. Okay. Then I have another visual for you about backbends. Oh, sorry, I didn't prepare that. Okay. So I wanted to talk to you a bit about backbends with feet apart and not with feet together, because this is an issue for practitioners. Many postures are taught with feet together. Can you think of some of these postures when the feet are said to be kept together? We can even look at Uttanasana, camel pose. The knees are supposed to be together. The feet are supposed to be together. But in page 242, Geeta says that in Uttanasana, in the beginning, it is difficult to catch the heels. If it is difficult to catch the heels, keep the knees slightly apart so that the movement of the spine is freer and the thighs do not pain. And I would add, because Maria asked about the elderly can either do it with the chair and bolsters behind them, but if they are elders that are practicing constantly, then they could put a bolster on their heels. They can tuck in the toes to lift the heels a bit higher. And of course, there is also the option of using wooden blocks near the heels to have more height. The idea is to see where can they backbend to, and then bring the height to their hands so they can have support of their hands in Uttanasana. And of course, feet apart. Then in page 245, she says about Dhanurasana, those who find it difficult to keep the feet together can spread them slightly apart and do this asana. So this is Dhanurasana, the bow pose when you lie on your abdomen and you lift your legs up. And I don't think I've ever practiced this with feet together. I always keep my feet apart. It's always remarkable for me that she says that if you have difficulty, do it this way. And I never had an idea doing it otherwise. Maybe I am a beginner in that way. Yes. Then I wanted to also tell you that Geeta encourages us to use a wooden plank and some blankets or pillows to make it easier to reach Urdhva Dhanurasana, which she says in page 247 is a very important posture to strengthen the reproductive system and the urinary organs. So Urdhva Dhanurasana, using a wooden plank and pillows as a way of reaching the posture. Now, did you find out which posture or postures? There are several, but let's ask about one back bend that relieve heaviness of the breasts during menopause. So during menstruation, back bends are out of the picture. But during menopause, which back bend helps alleviate the heaviness of the breasts? Do you know? That would be enough. So I did prepare a visual for you about menopause. So these three postures, now I see the wrong alignment of the pictures, so forgive me for that, but these three postures are marked in this section as very beneficial for menopause and each for different symptoms. So I started talking about Urdhva Dhanurasana on the left. That's for breast heaviness. But then she also says that Dvipada Viparita Dandasana, it could be, of course, supported, is very good for emotional stability. So if you are a very seasoned practitioner practicing from since you were a teenager and just now you're in menopause, then you can practice like this. Otherwise, I would encourage a woman in menopause to take support. And then on the right, I showed Bharadajasana here, but she says all twisting poses are very beneficial for her hormonal balance and menopause as well. So we tend to look at these postures as very advanced. And it's very advanced. And when we reach it in a class, it's like the peak of the class. And when we do it, maybe there is some accomplishment. If we don't practice it, there is frustration. So I feel like the discussion about Urdhva Dhanurasana is always about achievement. Can I do it? Can't I do it? But here, the focus is about what it gives me, how it serves me, how it can help me even during menopause, which is very interesting for me. Okay. And then she said in page 249 that Dvipada Viparita Dandasana is recommended. In that pose, it is recommended to use a wall for the soles of the feet. So she says, if the soles slip on the floor, support them against the wall. Okay, so we know, I hope you know that variation, that when you practice it with a chair or with cross bolsters, it's always that the feet are pressing, not always, it's typical that the feet are pressing into a wall, and it gives you a very nice spinal elongation as well and feels better on the lower back. But she also said that sometimes we need to support our elbows. So she said on the same page, 249, if the elbows slip, lie with the head near the wall. So then you take the elbows against the wall in that, but that's in the full posture, not when it is not supported. Okay. There is also three ways that Geeta Ji offers us to enter Dvipada Viparita Dandasana. One is from the floor, which is the classical, typical way of going into the full posture. And then she gives one option in page 249 and another in page 250 from a low stool or from a bench. So instead of a bench, since we don't have it at home, many times the whole practice, people will take a chair and do Dvipada Viparita Dandasana from the chair variation. And this posture also has a great effect on our mental state, as Ragya just read out about the effects of both Urdhva Dhanurasana and Dvipada Viparita Dandasana. So this posture especially she says, it keeps one healthy. What else can we ask for? And this is something that we can practice daily, supported on a chair or on bolsters. She says on page 250, the chest expansion gives a feeling of happiness and joy. And the modified technique is intended for those who are depressed, weak, sensitive, and emotional. It soothes and relaxes the nerves. And these postures remove dullness and laziness and make women more cheerful and courageous. I really like that remark. It's her way of seeing the women around her who are having difficult lives. And she said, this posture can make you happier. This posture can really bring the joy back into your body. And I'd like to hear from you if you had this experience. We'll leave it for the discussion section about joy and happiness coming from the practice. So it's not always a struggle. It's not always about achieving something. Sometimes these postures just make us feel happier. So I'd like us now to turn to Yoga Kurunta, which is the wall rope work. And it's page 252. And again, we have two parts to read. So please.
Kuranti is a puppet, a doll made of wood. Puppet shows are known all over the world, to children as well as to grown-ups. In Yoga Kurunta, one learns to manipulate oneself in the various yoga postures by means of a suspended rope as if one were a puppet. Here, the puppeteer and the puppet are one, performing their own puppet show. Performing yoga asanas with the aid of a rope has many advantages. Difficult asanas can be practiced with ease. Asanas in section 7, which are difficult, and asanas such as sarvangasana and halasana, if found difficult, can be practiced by the method as described in this section. The method is ideal for women who are heavy in the region of the thighs, the buttocks, the stomach, and for those who have become flabby after 1 or 2 deliveries. Due to the rope movement, the spine becomes supple and even difficult as can be done easily and safely. No jerking is felt, and a sense of direction is developed by regular practice. Old people can do yoga kurunta without injuring themselves.
And this bit, please.
These asanas are safe to perform because of the ropes. There is no jerk on the spinal vertebrae during movement. The asanas are beneficial for slip disc, backache, pain in the shoulders, the neck, and the waist, rheumatism of the shoulders and the spine, pain in the elbows and the wrists, stiffness of the body, hunchback, weakness in the waist and the buttocks, contraction of the chest muscles, pain in the breast, heaviness or insufficient growth of the breasts. As the chest expands in these asanas, the intake of oxygen increases. The breast muscles and thigh muscles are toned, and the abdomen is strengthened.
Thank you. There is one more bit. I'll share again the overall effect of Yoga Kurunta. Okay, I'll read then. All these asanas performed with different variations of movement help bring freedom of movement in the joints. The concave curvatures of the back help circulate the blood in that area. Sananda Sarvangasana and its variations performed in this way have the same effects as those mentioned in section 4. One can perform them accurately with the support of the wall and the help of the rope. They are especially helpful to women as they ease the tensions in the pelvic area and stretch the pelvic organs more effectively than when done independently. By the practice of Yoga Kurunta, one gains agility, lightness of the body, speed in movements, and alertness in the brain. People suffering from dislocation of the arms should avoid these asanas. And I just remembered, because of Maria's question, once I was in a workshop with Stephanie Quirk from New Zealand, Australia, and she said that for Thanasana with ropes, you can do it at any age. So it's really good for all, for kids, for teenagers, for practitioners, and it can be done I think during menstruation, during the bleeding days, I wouldn't do it. But for the elderly, I give it when I have ropes. I teach it. It's a wonderful way. It's very secure. You're holding the ropes. You don't have dislocation in the shoulders. You can do it. You hold the arms. They are straight. It doesn't require a lot of strain. And you get that arching back of the spine. That's a very nice variation. So she basically said that through the use of ropes, many postures become accessible for those who cannot practice otherwise. So again, I see it as an extension of her compassion, that she saw people who cannot practice because of so many reasons, certain postures, neck injuries, or whatever, so many reasons. And then they should know about the possibility of working with ropes. And then did you notice when Elizabeth just read out how many times she addressed breasts? Did you notice that? I don't think that we are aware usually, unless we had problems with the breast. Could be around lactation, could be around PMS when the breasts really hurt, and it could be, of course, around cancer or other issues. That there is a whole section in Iyengar yoga that deals with breasts. And there is a whole book by Bobby Clennon, Iyengar Yoga for Breast Care, which is a very nice book with her lovely drawings. And there she also addresses the different situations in which we need to take care of our breasts. And I'd like to show you, before I show you, did you notice which postures Geeta points to as very beneficial for healthy breasts? Does it pop in your mind? Okay, here is the diagram. So she says, especially Bhujangasana with a rope, which is sometimes called rope one, Purvatanasana, which is the posture I just mentioned and cited Stephanie Quirk. And on the right, there is Urdhva Hasta Dhanurasana. These three are very beneficial with breast health. And you can look up the book as well. It's a lovely book by itself. Okay, so now we reached our discussion section, and I will stop the recording and I'll resume the recording after our discussion. Okay, we thank you for the wonderful discussion, and thank you for the ideas of how to use wall ropes. We spoke about using wall ropes from window bars and the doorknob, and then installing something on the door as a possibility, and even doing it from a pull-up bar that doesn't need permanent installation. So wonderful thoughts. Thank you for that. And also thank you for sharing your experience with twists and backbends. And I think it was very insightful for all of us. Our next part, our next reading unit, is very interesting. And I even surprised myself when I decided that I take two different subjects and I placed them together. So we are going to read about asana and pranayama in pregnancy. And we're going to read about advanced postures. In pregnancy, usually we don't practice advanced postures, and advanced postures are sometimes and contraindicated for pregnancy. But still, we will read these two chapters together, and we will discuss pregnancy and how Iyengar yoga should be practiced during pregnancy, and we will touch on advanced postures. I think one of the most interesting questions to ask is, what is an advanced posture? Why do we need to practice advanced postures? And I think this is something that we need to discuss in the community. So as usual, I'll be sending you inspirational quotes and focus questions and reflective questions and two articles to expand about whatever we are reading. And I am available for follow-up questions, thoughts, or ideas regarding our reading. You can get in touch through WhatsApp, Facebook, or you can even email me. I'm going to send out a newsletter as well to conclude the reading of Unit 6 and to set the ground for Unit 7, which is pregnancy and advanced postures. And I'd like to hear from you if you're interested in having another experimental workshop of Two Voices, One Path, the instructions by Guruji and Geeta Ji from Light on Yoga and Yoga Agent for Women, practicing seated postures and twists, if you're interested in that. And also, I'd like to thank you again for supporting me through buying me a chai, supporting my yoga research or my yogic sadhana. And I'd like to hear from you also what you found most valuable from today's session. If you care to share. Okay, so we'll conclude here. And thank you all.